Hello, everyone. I'm Joyce Maddox, and I'm here with Amit Shah from Mystic India. If you just saw that wonderful promo, that pretty much says it all. And today he'll be our special guest, and we're going to ask him a bunch of questions and find out a little bit more about Mystic India. I'd like to introduce to you Amit Shah.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
That promo was so awesome. It just woke me up.
You
Because
know,
we're on different coasts, and I needed to be waking up, and that woke me up.
when I see that, I'm like, I miss it so much.
Oh, don't you miss live shows? There's nothing like a live show.
Nothing ever. It's never been,
How? First of all, how are you doing? How's your family doing? How are you doing?
Hanging in, doing the best we can, and just trying to get through it and be positive and, prioritize maybe different things in our lives now. Maybe spending more time with the family, taking more walks, doing things that we probably should have been doing this whole time. But, it's just a big reminder that we need to prioritize maybe time for ourselves more. So.
And the most important thing during all of this, no matter what happens, is family.
Absolutely.
Getting a chance to be around the ones that you love and the ones that love you so that we can get through this and go to the next level. So Let's start out. So first of all, we know who you are. You're Amit Shah, and you're with the Mystic India. You're the artistic director. And I am Joyce Maddox. I'm an independent producer, writer, director. And like I said, today I have the pleasure of speaking with Amit Shah, who is the director for Mystic India. It's the internationally acclaimed Bollywood dance spectacular based on the concept of ancient Indian tradition into modern Indian. The show features renowned musicians, brilliant dancers, breathtaking aerialists and acrobats, and 750 wonderful, fabulous costumes, which you just saw in the promo. The company has educated and delighted audiences around the world. I had the pleasure of witnessing this phenomenal performance in 2015 and again in 2018 at the Miramar Cultural Center, when I was operations manager. And the Miramar Cultural Center is like 18 miles outside of Miami. The show was a sellout both dates in Miramar, and the audience was transformed into a magical place with the sights and sound of mystical India. So I'm going to go right into the questions, Amit. Who is Amit Shah, and what makes you the unique individual that you've become?
Oh my God, so much, right? My journey with the arts started, honestly, when I was 3 years old and just fell in love with performing. At that time, obviously performing at home for my friends and family, and then eventually just really continuing that throughout, all stages of my life when I was, in early education phases, and then throughout college, and then eventually when I started my dance company. It was never something I could, stop doing. I loved performing. I love dance. I love creating. And that's what propelled me into this career. And what propels me every day is my absolute love for, like I was telling you, live shows. I mean, there's nothing more magical, than experiencing a live show, whether it's as an audience or as a performer. And that's what I thrive on every day. I'm doing different things all the time. I'm a social media creator as well. I also teach. We do programs, all kinds of programs, even now through lockdown, for kids. To promote the cultural arts. But my real love is getting up on that stage, or even experiencing a show, my own show many times. There's no other feeling, that can compare.
You know what? I'm going to pick on something that you said because I think it's so funny. And a lot of people that are in the arts say this. You said when you were a child, you used to do shows at your own house. And it's funny because when we used to have family events, I used to set up the backyard, and I used to make my cousins. I'd line up my dolls, my cousins, anybody, and I'd put a stage. And I think that all of us, we knew when we were younger, even though we didn't know, it was in us and we wanted to do shows. You know what's funny is somebody on cable TV the other day said that maybe we have to kind of go back to that. What it was, it's a producer that's in Hollywood, and he's so desperate for live events. What he did is he actually set up something in his backyard. And another friend of mine is doing something where he's just finding the neighbor with the biggest yard, and they're starting to do a lot of basic round outdoor events with less people and streaming them. Maybe that's something we have to do for now, just so that we can still get the field. Even if it's only 20, 30 people, you still get the live event and people get the feel of the people that are in the audience. Because I think what takes it away, even if you do something and you stream it, you need the live audience to get the feel. And I know as a performer, you get a feeling from the audience and get the feedback from them when you're performing, and it makes you feel even better, and it makes you want to work even harder.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think the live audience is important.
100%. I mean, and no matter what, I mean, yes, we've all gotten used to the digital platform in some way or the other, whether we're, in Zoom meetings or we're, doing live events now, or streamed events. But yeah, it's more just, there's a certain magic that you experience. I mean, I remember when I was younger and I used to go to Six Flags, okay? And, there's a bunch of rides when I was a child. And there was like, the kids zone or whatever area they used to call it. But I used to really I begged my parents, I'm like, I'm going to look at the show timings and I want to go to every single one that I can. And I remember, this is a funny story. I remember one time they picked me to come backstage and be part of a magic trick. And Joyce, that really resonates with me even now. That experience as a child was something I could never forget. And even if it was just for 2 minutes, that brief going backstage and getting a sneak peek for, as performers kind of leave the stage and they're entering and exiting, and then you come back and then you see the show and you're like, wow, like I can't believe I just was part of that for 1 second. That was magic for me. And I remember there was another show, a Batman show, and I went to this show, I don't even know, countless times just to see how they did it, how the special effects happen. That was my favorite part of going to theme parks. I mean, yes, I love the rides, but the live shows were another magic for me, another thrill. So, yeah.
Because, the overall in that is that performers are born. So you're born as a performer. You're either born as a performer or you're not born as a performer. And what you do if you're born with it, and then you add to it by the training and learning all the technique of it, but it still has to be internal and has to be a part of who you are. And you can tell the difference, even with your show, you can tell that's who you are. So I think that's really super important. Some people try and it doesn't work. And other people, like your show is magical. I'd rather go to your show than go to Disneyland. Because I feel the same experience. It's like I just got off the ride on Space Mountain and I stayed at the top and I keep dropping and coming up. It's wonderful.
It's funny that you say that because, when we're backstage and after when we're touring for so long and the cast is exhausted and, we do that last 5-minute huddle before we get on that stage as a company just to regroup and sync our energies. And that's one of the things that's mentioned. It's like, here, that magic that you felt going to Disney World, no matter how tired you are, I want you to go and give the audience that experience. And we use that analogy quite a bit. So it's funny you say that.
Yeah, I understand. Here's something else. And I think you kind of gone over this, but let's just do it a little bit more. And we're probably going to throw in some clips after this so people can see some more. Can you give us a basic overview of Mystic India? Yeah.
The tagline is that it's a transition from ancient India to modern India. And what I mean by that is, India has such deeply rooted history. And I think the history of India is what makes it so beautiful and majestic. And that's why we call it Mystic India. But also, Indian cinema has gotten so much attention around the world these days. So it's important to kind of, tell a narrative about how that even came to be, how the word Bollywood even came to be and why it's significant. And before we get into Bollywood, you have to understand the history of India, what Indian culture is about, and where Bollywood cinema draws its influence, which is from the folk arts and the classical arts and things like that. So, it's important to kind of take that audience on that full journey. And, everyone knows, maybe Bollywood from Slumdog Millionaire, or, they've seen, music videos now, which are all over YouTube and everywhere. But, connecting that with the history of India is quite important. So that's what this show really, caters, to do. And I wanted to do it in a way that really was magical. You know, like that first time I remember going to India, and I was born and raised in New Jersey. You know, I'm a New Jersey, yeah, I'm a New Jersey guy, you know. And here you can say it's like little India because there's so many, you know, it's a very diverse community, but there's so many Indians. So I never felt like I was missing any part of my culture, but I wanted to tell this story from a US perspective, or from a non, you know, Indian perspective. Because when I went to India and saw the magic, or felt the magic, you know, it was an experience I would never forget. And the show actually was created in my head while I was on a trip to India, because I was like, wow, this is so amazing. And obviously, you know, when you live somewhere. So if I was born and raised in India, you probably take, you know, its beauty for granted, just by the, you know, pure fact that you're living and breathing that environment every day. But having visited it or learned about, you know, cultural things growing up and then having to visit it, I felt like that was a story I needed to tell. And that's what I wanted to bring to life on stage.
Okay, question, just going into what you just said. Are you planning in the future to do a documentary, maybe a little bit more detailed about ancient and Bollywood, and then using Mystic India as a base for that, since we can't do live performances and people that have seen
I think oh, sorry. I think you cut out for a second, but I think you're asking me, you know,
if you're planning on doing a documentary in the future.
So it's something that we always talk about, and for years, and more the cast talks about it more than anyone, because there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we were like, you know, people applaud us for the show when they see it live, and we shake hands and we're, you know, signing posters and we're interacting with audiences. But I wish they could see what happens on the journey to create this product. And that's something we've always wanted to capture. In fact, when we were touring in South Africa, we had a camera crew following us about 18 hours per day. And we had about 3 cameras scattered through, you know, my hotel, the cast hotel, and, you know, coming into my rooms at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we have so much footage. You know, if someone gave me the green light, I could put out this footage today, and it would be so relevant and so important and inspiring for artists, because, you know, really the magic does happen in creating the product. And when you have so many beautiful minds, you know, putting their energies into something that can create, you know, the magic that we call Mystic India. It's not just my show; it's really the show of the cast, and it's incredible, you know, what goes into creating the show. And it's more incredible for me because, you know, like Broadway has very high budgets and has hundreds of people working behind the scenes. This show, I would say, it's on the same caliber of entertainment, but you know, it's a mom and pop event, you know, deal. You know, we're creating this as we go. Like when we started the show in 2011, it was never meant to tour. It was never packaged to be a touring production. So over the years, over the course of 9 touring years, we've still tried and tested every method, every strategy to make it physically possible for a company of 25, sometimes even 65 artists to travel with this show and perform. It's a very, very difficult show. I think that's why we love it, though, because it's so, once it's finished and we get the reaction from an audience, there's nothing like that.
And I think doing a documentary film is also going to be audience building for the future. Sure. Because people can't go to a show now, and if you put out a documentary and they start to hear and see more, even if it's a person that's never been to the show, they're going to say all of a sudden, you know, no matter what, when that show comes out, I'm going to see it. So I think that's a good part of audience development for the future.
Joyce,
we have downtime.
Someone at Netflix, let me know.
Okay. Also, virtual.
Yeah.
I have a younger brother, and all he does is play virtual games. I'm wondering how we can incorporate dance or something like Mystic India into a virtual game.
That would be really cool. I've never heard that one before. Joyce,
because look at the audience that you would get, a younger audience. You push all age limits, and especially, you know, for the younger audience, everything's virtual now. And I know that I'm not in the younger audience, but I got on and did something virtual And I literally felt like I was a part of it. And can you imagine being in something like the dance show that you have and actually feeling like you're on stage because it's virtual? That would be a dream come true for some people.
And, you know, I asked myself when we went into lockdown, I think it was, you know, first we thought it was going to be 2 weeks, then 2 months. And then, you know, we didn't know what was going on. I said, what is the future of our industry? And where are we going to go? Are we going to be putting on 3D glasses and just watching TV? And, you know, what are we going to be doing? What is the future of entertainment? And many times these ideas, maybe not as great as yours, actually, because this is a fantastic idea that you came up with, came to my mind is like, how do we make this an immersive experience by still being, you know, in our own homes or wherever we are? You know, but the truth of the matter is, Joyce, like we were saying, there is nothing like being, you know, it's like going to a restaurant, and we all miss sitting in a restaurant many times, right? I mean, some of us are doing that, some of us aren't, but it's, you go, you get dressed up a certain way, you go and you attend. There's a social aspect to it. You know, my favorite part of going to a show, attending a show, is before the show starts, when everyone comes into the theater and the mood, you know, there's a certain mood in the air, and, you know, it's like, when is it going to start? And you're sitting and you're reading this pamphlet, and, you know, that experience, you're not going to do at home because you'll be on your phone, and you'll be, you know, the kids will be here and the dog will be here. And I get where the world might be headed. I just hope that we never lose sight of the fact that those experiences that we have, you know, going to a live event of any kind, is really unlike any other. And I hope my kids get to see that, experience that, as well as everything on the digital platform. So yes, that would be a really cool idea, Joyce, but I really hope at the same time we're able to get back into that theater.
You know what? And I ask people now, they kind of smile and then they get sad. What was the last live event that you went to?
That I went to my last live event. So there was 2, and there was actually both produced by us. Well, one was a Mystic India show we did in February, and it was sort of a bow down to Mystic India unknowingly. Because, and by bow down, I mean, you know, now that this lockdown has happened, our perspective on everything has changed, whether we're going into live events in the future or not, or how that's going to work. Our perspective on creating those shows has definitely changed. Everyone's has. So anyway, so in February, we did a show in New Jersey, and, again, that's where the show was born. You know, it was born in New Jersey. Our first show in 2011 was in New Jersey. So it was a 9-year finish. And that was the last live show event. And then 3 weeks later, we went in lockdown. And then it was actually the week of lockdown. Well, kind of right before it, the Friday before, I would say, we had an event we call a gala with my performing arts company, which is called Atma. And I teach kids, and we have schools in New Jersey, New York. And we had a gala type of event. And that was the last time we interacted with one another. And I remember it vividly because obviously at that time, we didn't know what was going to happen, but the talk of coronavirus was there. And, right. You know, I remember people saying, hey, should I even attend this event? Is it going to be safe? And I remember the event actually ended about 45 minutes early because people were getting a little scared of all this talk and news. That was literally the last event many of us have, you know, many of the people I'm affiliated with have attended as well, because I was literally on the brink of coronavirus really taking over. Yeah, I remember it vividly where I was and what I was doing. But the last show is I'm nostalgic just thinking about, you know, that experience, because had I known it was the last, you know, I'm sure many of us think that, had I known that was the last time I was going to do that, I probably would have done it a little differently.
Well, have you ever heard that you just would have kept dancing as long as you could and not stop, because you're saying, if this is the last time I'm going to dance, then I want to dance until my legs fall off. I mean, basically.
And so I have cast members in LA and New York, and, you know, we're back and forth between both coasts. And whenever we're doing, you know, a new touring season, you know, the cast is comprised of different members, a different pool. You know, we have a pool of dancers, and we pull. And I know that so many of my artists who are not part of our last season, or I don't want to say last season, but the season before coronavirus,
Mm-hmm.
you know, probably much regrets not touring at that time or not being part of those last few shows. Because that was probably the last time that we're not even just touring and performing, but also traveling and experiencing that side of things. So,
well, hopefully we can get back as soon as possible, because like everybody I asked this question, they all have a story. I mean, I know my last concert, I was in Miami, and if I'd have known, I would have stayed there and partied longer, because I didn't know that that was going to be my last time really being out and getting to dance and move and do everything. So it's going to end one day. I'm going to go to the next question. Dance is an ancient and celebrated cultural tradition in India. Yeah. Folk dances abound across the country, and huge crowds of people can be found dancing at festivals and weddings. Dance and song feature heavily in India's cinema, and I think you brought up a little bit about Bollywood films. Where does Indian dance draw its roots from?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and we try to touch upon this, you know, maybe in a more subtle way in the show. You know, dance in India, first of all, started to tell stories. So naturally, in the Indian culture, telling stories of, you know, at that time, a lot of it was religious, you know, telling stories about the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and those stories were told to children. And many dancers who learned classical Indian dance at the time, which really started this entire revolution of dance in India, would go to temples and perform as a means of worship. And so that's where everything really started. You know, if you look at classical Indian dance, like I said, again, it's meant to tell stories. So that's where many people really even understood their own culture. They would become performers. They would perform. They would learn. They would learn. Even Indian classical music draws so much from so much history. So that's where, you know, dance is so and music is so part of the Indian culture from the very beginning. So when films came about, and when Bollywood, we talk about Bollywood films, but the Indian film industry is not comprised of just Bollywood, but so many other languages. So Bollywood is mostly Hindi cinema, which is the national language of India. And I think it's about 40 to 50% of Indian cinema is comprised of Bollywood. But there's so many other genres within Indian cinema, so many different languages. And so all of these cultural differences and you know, all these cultural differences are celebrated in cinema in so many ways. And again, that's what we try to bring to the show, and try to show, you know, that, hey, films started as a means to tell stories. And that's why films and Bollywood films right now are so ingrained. So much of music and dance is ingrained in them. They're all musicals, but it's not just because they're cheesy and they, you know, they sell the films. It's because the history of dance and music goes so many years back, and it's just an ingrained part of being, you know, an Indian.
That last clip that he showed, it looks like you guys are flying. It's so amazing with the lights beaming down and everybody up in the air. You look like you're flying. It's just such a celebration. I'm going to come back a little bit later, because I want to know, since you now said that you were born in New Jersey, where you got your traditional training. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to keep going with the questions, but that's one thing I do want to know. I want to talk at the end a little bit more about your training and what school you went to, because since you weren't, because I would have thought that you trained in India and you trained in America. So I want to know where you trained. So we're going to go back to that a little bit later. So what is the difference between, because this is still part of that other question, what is the difference between the authentic Indian and the modern Indian techniques?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the funny thing so when we talk about modern techniques, let me start there actually. Techniques are not really ancient or modern. Techniques are basically, you know, vocabulary that's defined for an artist, right? And you learn that vocabulary, and hopefully that vocabulary will help you basically tell your stories that you want to tell. So, you know, like I tell my students this all the time, you're learning, I'm giving you the alphabet. You know, I'm going to train you a certain way. I'm going to give you the alphabet. What you do with it and what you create, that's you as an artist. And obviously over time, so much has changed. And so that's why when we talk about this modern generation of Indian dance, we're really talking about how it's changed over time, and more than changed, how it's become a global celebration. You know, I think when I was first born, and maybe even before that, I don't think the entire world knew about culture of all kinds like they do now. And maybe they didn't appreciate it. Maybe they didn't know about it. There was no platform to see it. You know, now we have so many ways that you can get in touch with every part of the world. So there's so much that has changed just because of that technology and everything that's happened, right? Because now everyone is sort of influencing each other in so many ways. And so now when we talk about Indian dance today, you know, of course, it has its history. The alphabet hasn't changed for any of us, but the way we communicate, maybe the way that we tell our stories has changed. So Indian dance, especially specifically in the Bollywood, you know, sector, is really taking influence from all parts of the world, from Africa and the US and Europe, and you know, India and Europe have a tie from the very beginning, obviously, right? And so much of what we do is connected with the European, you know, way of life. So in many ways, you know, Indians have always been quite global in their approach to things. So when we talk about, again, Bollywood dance, it's, again, drawing its influence from so many different places. And that's what is sort of the newer generations. I guess it's more prevalent. That's what we celebrate. Again, back in the day, dance was never meant to perform for someone. It was meant for as a form of worship for yourself. And gradually over time, new ways of telling these stories were introduced. So Bharatanatyam, which is one of the forms of classical dance, was strictly done by soloists in temples with no music, no live music. It was done with just a set of ghungru, which is bells on their feet. So the artists would play their own music and tell their own stories. And over time, the Indian royalty drew from that and wanted entertainment for their courts. And that's how entertainment changed in India. And that's, again, the story that we like to tell in India, in Mystic India, is that as well. That we start in a temple. That picture that you saw was actually from a temple. And then we go into sort of this era where the Mughals ruled India, and dancers were brought in for entertainment. And then we go into Bollywood, which is now the global phenomenon, you know, as we see it today, and we celebrate. So.
Yeah, that's an amazing clip right there. This is a good time because you're talking about dance. You're training. So when did you start training to become a dancer? What type of dance did you take when you were younger? Because if you talk to the average person, they'll say, oh, well, I took ballet, I took tap, I took jazz, I took hip hop. How did you prepare in the beginning? What was your introduction? What type of dance did you study? Who did you study with? Who's your favorite dance teacher? Those type of things.
Oh my God. So here's a funny thing. I'm going to answer all your questions by basically saying I have never really been trained, ever. And
you were born to dance. That's what it is.
I was, you know, so like I said, Indian music and dance is so ingrained in our culture. So growing up, our family would attend, you know, festivities or, you know, weddings or other celebrations. And dance was just something we all did. It was not something we felt that we had to be trained for, right? And so, yes, when I was growing up, we were part of like cultural organizations that would put on a show, but we were never trained by a teacher that honestly had any sort of experience or training themselves. They would just pass on the knowledge that they had from the experiences that they had. there's a festival right now that's going on. It's even right now, today, actually, as we're in it. It's called Navratri, which is a 9-day festival in India, specifically from the region of Gujarat, where my family is from in India. And there's so many events that take place in the US to celebrate Navratri. And we do a dance called Garba. Again, it's done by the entire community. So whether you're a dancer or not is sort of irrelevant. You just attend and you dance. It's just something we all do. If you ask my entire family, they would say they're dancers because they all have danced, and continue to dance all the time. Have they been trained? Most of them have not. So training at that time was something that wasn't done. And that's why, again, I formed my school, Atma Performing Arts. I have a school because we are basically now trying to define the vocabulary of Bollywood, which is so broad, and teach it to kids and obviously give them a cultural experience at the same time, something that I never had. I probably sort of pseudo train now because I have a different perspective on what I think I need to be able to, the knowledge I need to be able to have as a teacher. But growing up, I never learned anything like that. I wouldn't say I didn't learn. I learned, but I learned through experience, not necessarily a formal class or curriculum.
So now you're kind of teaching, because I always say with music and dance, music has its own language and dance has its own language. So you're now teaching also the language of the music and the dance.
Absolutely. And, like I said, Bollywood is not really a dance. We call it it's a genre of dance now, but it really isn't. It's more of the industry, the film industry, that really represents, again, 50% of Indian cinema. But we say Bollywood dance, but Bollywood dance isn't really a dance form. There's no language there. So we had to basically take the language of ballet and the language of Indian classical dance and then folk dance and then hip hop and then jazz and then basically create sort of in our own structure. And that's why, it's done differently by people all around the world, because there is no defined methodology here. But I think that's also what gives it its charm and approachability. And that's why I think when people come to see Mystic India or see the show, they relate to so many different parts of it, unknowingly, because they see the familiarity. And I have a very diverse cast. I know we didn't touch upon that, but my cast is not comprised of Indians, mostly.
Right.
We have a few Indians in the cast, but they've all been training in Indian dance, obviously through the company and being part of the show. But one of our goals has always been to celebrate diversity, and that is a huge topic of discussion, now I think more than ever. But diversity needs to be celebrated, and so if we're telling this story of Indian dance, and we're traveling the world and showing this, having the show, showcased to so many different audiences, we need to have some diversity amongst our own cast, because I think then when people are watching, they're not so intimidated by it. They feel part of it. And that was my experience when I was watching shows. I wanted to feel like I was part of them. And I want to give that same energy now, with my product.
And I think that's important with a lot of people's live events and shows and things that they do, that they have a dialogue. And what you're bringing up, the dialogue on diversity, you can use this form of dance to talk about cultural differences and diversity, which we're going to get into a little bit more. I have another question on that, but I think that's important that we be able to bridge the gaps in different cultures and bring all the cultures together through a form like dance as a form to do that. And I think that's amazing that we can do that. That's Absolutely. What's so wonderful about dance and music and all the different arts, that you can bridge gaps and bring people together. Absolutely. But for the next question, and that was a part of the question, was how can we use dance to bridge the cultural differences, not only in India, but all over the world? How does dance unite us as a people?
Well, it's funny you asked me that, because I think now through lockdown, so many, we've all, seen TikTok, and we've seen the Instagram videos, and we've seen so many different social media platforms embrace dance in so many ways, right? The untrained dancers to the most trained dancers are now communicating in so many different ways. And I think dance and music has really united us through this lockdown already. Korean pop music has made such a splash around the world. And it has been for years, but now people are talking about it more and more and more. I see so many people on these platforms doing Bollywood music or fusing the Bollywood music with urban music or R&B and hip hop. And what a change, today. And what we've talked about through many movements that have taken place, during this time, whether it was Black Lives Matter or whether it was the LGBTQ movements, what we've tried to say is it's fantastic that we're also united by our music and our love for dance, and we found so many great things to unite us, so many commonalities that we all enjoy. Let's not forget the origin of where those things came from. And people who made that possible. I think dance is a uniting way of communication, and it unites us all the time. I look at dance studios today. I see Asians, I see Black, I see white, I see brown, I see everything, right? And it's beautiful to see that. That's what this world is about. And if social media and technology are supposed to be helping us achieve that, bravo. But if we're forgetting the fact that each of these things, and we can celebrate them and we can love them, they have origin. There's people who are connected that started these things, that sort of sent this wave. We should love the people. We should love the idea. And we should never forget that. Racial injustice, that's a whole different topic, is
right.
The biggest, topic right now, and as it should be. But again, if we're talking about dance and music, I feel like that's when the racial injustice ends, because everyone forgets, oh yes, that came from here. And there might be a racist, or they might not like certain individuals, but they're celebrating the art of, and I don't know. I mean, I would say there's pros and cons, to dance and music really uniting us. As long as we don't lose sight, like I said, of where they came from and the history. I think it's absolutely beautiful to see the world going into this, trend. I don't know. I could say so much about it.
Well, I mean, I think is when you talk about music too, that if you take any crowd anywhere and you turn on some music, somebody's going to start dancing. If you look around the crowd, and I don't care how many people it is, if it's a beat and they hear a drum, they hear some type of basic beat, I don't care what age they are, what group they are, they're going to all start dancing. They might dance in their own form or whatever they hear in their head. And it might not be perfect, but they're all going to become happy, and you'll see the difference. So I think we can bridge everything with music and dance and make a better world.
As long as you're, as someone who is enjoying the music, as people, we understand that beat, where that beat come from. Oh, that beat has African influence, or that beat has Indian influence. And just to know that and appreciate that and value that. And then I think if it's going to unite us, then that's fantastic, because then we're going to appreciate each other's value. We all bring something to the table, the history of each of our cultures. That has value, and that is beautiful.
I mean, I always say one drum, that's all it is. One drum connects every rhythm, every beat, and every culture.
I'm with you.
Okay, so the next question, that's exciting. That's a topic we could go on and on and on for. What is the future for Mystic India company, and what is your future as an individual?
Well, I would say there's many things that we're planning on doing. Like I said, in February, we took sort of a mini bow to Mystic India. And it was basically a seasonal bow. Now that coronavirus has happened and so much has changed in our perspective, and our narratives are gonna be a little bit different but we're not gonna just go back to how things were, the same show, the same narrative, the same dialogue. So much has changed. I mean, and as it should have. So we are going to be revamping the show. It's actually was already scripted prior to coronavirus as a new show. But now that this experience has happened, like I said, we're going to obviously talk a little bit differently and bring a new show to the table when things go back to normal, which I hope they do soon. But Mystic India is not going to go anywhere. It's still going to create products. It might not be the same Mystic India you saw at Miramar or anywhere else that you saw around the world, but it's going. Me as a producer, I'm here. Like I said, connecting the other question is, I'm here to stay, and I want to create not only Indian art or celebrate Indian culture, but I want to celebrate diversity in general. I think now more than ever, like we were saying, there's a need for people to see. We say cultural dance in the performing arts world, or cultural arts, as such a small sector. It's like every presenter is like, I have to check mark. Did I get all those things? I feel like this cultural sector should be a majority. It should really be a majority of what is being presented everywhere. Because if everyone is presenting something that has a different cultural feel, has different, you're taking art and you're really celebrating it in more ways. Art is actually doing what it should be doing, which is uniting people. When we segregate it as its own little category, I hope that the whole performing arts industry as a whole now is able to recognize that more than ever, is we don't need to have just here's the African, we cut out, there's the Indian, we check that off. I hope that all of the arts in general can be united in this way, and we don't have to subcategorize everything so much. And so that's why when I'm scripting this next show, I want to script it in a way that's not really, yes, it's going to talk about India and its magic and the folk dances and the classical dances and all of that, but it's going to talk a lot more about diversity, and it's going to talk a lot more about inclusion. And what I love about Indian music is, like you said, you can hear something from a Bollywood film, and I think it's like Korean pop music. It just sticks. There's something that sticks, and whether you know the language or not, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You're listening to music and you're feeling a vibe. You're getting a certain energy, and that's what we should all be doing right now. And so going into the future, I'm looking forward to bringing this next product to light. I'm also writing another musical show, which is, been something that's been in my mind for about 5-6 years now. And it's just been turning. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this and do this. I'm finally scripting it now as well. And that show is going to be something I want to put out there, very, very soon. Right now, I will tell you, Joyce, it's difficult though, because like I was telling you off camera, is we don't really know what is going to happen with bringing these shows back. I know what is prioritized now. When you coming from the cultural arts presenter background, you have so much experience with bringing shows to light. What do you think is going to happen when things go back to the normal, where we can be in a theater or we can present a show? How are we all going to prioritize what actually gets the attention? Because for me, from an internal perspective, my company is not meeting at the moment. Like, we're all obviously segregated. We're not in rehearsals. We don't have 40 people meeting in a studio every week. It's not possible right now. And we don't know when it is going to be possible. So to even create a new show, we can get it scripted, we can get it ready, we can get the creatives in. But to physically create that show, that even is uncertain when that will happen.
Yeah. So I think that the next level of show is going to be, and this is just my opinion of it, because the venues now are all going to be at 25%. Here they're 25%. I'm in Los Angeles. Someplace else they might be able to do 30%, 50%. And a lot of the venues are saying, well, we're going to have to go back to the fact that we can only do smaller shows, because based on revenue, you can only have 20% of a house. You're in an 1,800 seat theater, and you can have 25%. So I think that we're going to have to go to more where you have a canned show. What I mean by a canned show, You already have it. Someone like you is on stage, you introduce your show, and then you just play clips. Or you moderate the show, but it's already been taped without the artist being there. I think it's going to go more of a format that, yes, I think that it's to start off, because people are doing one-person shows now. They're doing two-person shows. You as a moderator for a show or a host for a show could still present your show. Your cast would not be there, but you would be live. So you're more or less talking and introducing your own show. And I was getting ready to say, do you have anything like that prepared in case somebody said that? Because I could see that being a really good evening with you introducing the show, going to a clip of the show, showing the show as a complete show, because I think you videotaped the whole show already and showed the whole show. And then at the end, you talk to the audience and do feedback. And then audience is going to be a combination audience. It'll be a combination of the 25% live and then the combination of the audience that's streaming. I think that's what people are going to have to do if they want to do something big. I mean, it sounds way out of the box, but I think everything now is going to be out of the box. And as performers, in order to survive, the box is going to have to expand and expand. And then later you go where you have live shows.
Sure.
Because you have a lot of product already that you can already show. And that gives you more time to develop your shows in the future, but also gives you something now that you can show now. So if someone called and said, we want Mystic India, they would get you and maybe another person and still get Mystic India, but not Mystic India, everybody there.
Sure.
I mean, what do you think about something like that? Does that sound crazy to you? It's not. I'm trying to get to reality, because we're at the point now, I think if you put 1,800 people in a theater and somebody sneezed, it would be like a fire.
I know.
And
I don't disagree with
crazy, but that's the way it is. So I'm trying to figure out other things that people can do. And I think that you're going to have to start small and then go big. I mean, they're doing concerts now at drive-in movies. And then they're having some artists come out at the end and talk to the audience and say, thank you for coming, or introducing themselves. Yeah. So I think that's where you have to go until we go to the next phase. Like here, performing arts centers are phase 4. We're only in phase 2. And it's taken us 6 months to get to phase 2.
I mean, not to be negative Nancy over here, but even after phase 4, it's uncertain. Let's say coronavirus is gone. Maybe I think people are still going to be scared because anything could come. So you're right. I mean, I don't disagree with anything you said. I think that is a great way to sort of start looking at the future. It makes me sad because, again, the magic of this show particularly, and many shows, but I can speak on my show, is that, it's this cast, it's these number of costume changes, it's that energy. When I interact with audiences after the show, right? I know around the world, I'm not even talking about just here in the US, it's everywhere. We love the costumes. That's what it's like, their energy. How do you capture that energy on a video? It's very hard. I don't think it's possible. And sure, I think that we should probably be having more conversations about what kind, because obviously we want to keep the purpose of the show is to tell stories and to keep that alive. And we have to keep that going.
You can still tell your story. Yes.
Yes. I agree. I agree that we have to do that. I've had many conversations about stuff like this. It hasn't happened. We haven't nothing has ever happened beyond that. I think it probably should. And you're right, Joyce. I mean, thank you for reminding me that, we probably need to get back into that, world. Not because people are going to forget Mystic India or people are going to forget, this show or that show, but people need to see art. I mean, they need to.
And it gives them hope for the future if they know that maybe they're not seeing it now, but they know a year and a half, 2 years, they will be able to see it. At least if they can see, have one person live to talk to them and show them what they're missing, they'll look forward to it in the future. I just want to keep people's hope up. I don't want people to get stuck and think they're going to be in a box the rest of their life. I want people to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and through arts and dance, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that we as artists push that light, them to walk basically to the light.
Well, here, because we don't have so much time left, but I do want to say on a positive note with this, what we're talking about is, as artists, as audiences, as really the global community, we all have to adapt to what is happening. We have to get creative. We have to step outside of the box, actually stay in the box, but also step outside of the mental box in so many ways. And that's an exciting time. Yes, it's sad that we're not going to be in a live show and all these things. But what is exciting is maybe something really creative and beautiful will happen from everyone really thinking deeply about, we've seen Broadway as it is for, I don't know, over 100 years.
Yes.
I don't even know how many years, but maybe something will change. Maybe there will be a new trend, a new phenomenon in entertainment. And I'm looking forward to that, maybe something more immersive, maybe, but I just hope that we as artists and everyone as an audience, and also me as an audience, because I love being in the audience,
me too,
can connect in person in some capacity, whatever that is. I'm all for, changing the scope of entertainment and being ahead of everyone. I want to make sure that Mystic India is always doing the most. Yeah, let's look forward to that, hopefully. And hopefully soon we'll all be in that, in a better place to be able to do that. I think right now, though, what scares me more than anything is the economy of the whole situation, because, we all, as artists, we still need to eat. We still need to have a family. We still have to have a roof over our heads. And obviously, arts have always suffered economic,
They're always the first to suffer, arts and education.
But I hope that people realize now that's what we need. Like, to get through this mentally, to be able, we need art. That's why art is important. That's why social media and everyone has been doing dance videos and TikToks and this, because the art is that's what's keeping us going, looking forward to things. I hope after this, the arts get more funding and more attention than it ever has before. This art is, our saving grace and the hope that we have.
Yes, for the future.
Absolutely.
So I have a closing question, and this is just to close it out. What is your message to the listening audience? if remember when we said, if we'd have known that was our final concert, what is your message to the listening audience? What do you want to tell them right now that takes them along and puts them on the next level?
Absolutely. I've always said this, pre-corona, I'm going to say it post-corona. And most of our conversation has been about this, is support the arts in every possible way you can. And sometimes it means attending, just showing up. That's it. It doesn't all have to be financial, buying a ticket. We get it. Everyone is in all sorts of, everyone's going through something. But support, show up, be part of the conversation and the future of what really makes the world such a beautiful place. Arts, culture, music, dance, comedy. It's what keeps us really hopeful and what will keep us going as, going forever. And so I just hope everyone gives art a little bit more attention than, scrolling through and giving it a like, or, yes, that stuff is great. And it's making us more aware of what's happening, but it's also making us less appreciative of what is, like we said, these live events. So I hope everyone continues to support the arts, and I hope artists are motivated to keep creating, because we can't let we can't let this situation hold us back. What we have to do is adapt and just be part of the future of entertainment. And like I said, I hope that for me, myself, and for all artists that are out there, it just gives us a different way of, allows us a different way of thinking. And that's it. It's just a little kick in the butt, to think differently and come up with new concepts for the future.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I wish we could talk forever. And I just want to say thank you as a presenter. I want to say thank you for the work that you've done. And I look forward to seeing you to what I call the other side. They're going to show some clips as we're going out. And hopefully we'll get it. The next time we speak, we'll be talking about booking the show and seeing you at different places. But until then, thank you, thank you, thank you. And like you said, please support the arts in whatever way that you can. You have a blessed day and take care of your family and take care of yourself. And we will see you later. Thank you.
Bye.